Welcome to Preparing for the Unexpected. Today, I'd like to talk about an article I came across entitled Artificial Intelligence and Empathic Leadership from Harvard Business Review. And I believe the author's name is Jamil Zaki. And I wanted to talk to someone about that today. And I thought, who better than to have on the show the author of Scaling Pyramids and founder and CEO at Crisis Lead, Christopher Stitt. Chris, welcome back.
Thanks, Alex. It's great to see you again. I'm really excited to talk through this and compare some notes and some thoughts on this so that we can help your audience understand the importance of empathic leadership, especially in the world of AI adoption.
Well, let's jump straight into it. Why is there, because in the article it outlines there's a big gap. Why is there a big gap between top leadership and employees and how they feel about AI and other things?
Well, it's interesting. One of the things I talk about in my book is that almost every organization is built like a pyramid, right? Narrow at the top, wide at the bottom. And as you have that organization, you not only have just kind of the top and the bottom, but there's multiple layers inside. And within those layers, what you end up having are what I call pyramid within pyramid reporting chains, right? Those have a tendency occasionally to form silos where information does not flow as smoothly as it should because people become protective of their part of the organization or their role in the organization. And they want to make sure that anything that filters up makes them look good. But at the same time, this actually disrupts what you're looking at from the top because you don't get that full picture of what's really going on towards the bottom. And a lot of this becomes part of the culture of the organization. I was on a webinar with the Good Governance Academy back in January, and we talked about the role of the board of directors and their job to try and understand, how the entire organization was functioning, not just the C-suite, but doing so in a way that doesn't interfere with the C-suites and the manager's requirements to actually operate the organization. And one of the things we talked about there was this concept of the muddy middle, right? Where you get to a point where it's far enough down from the top and, high enough up from the bottom that things just kind of get murky. And that's where a lot of the information gets confused. And one of the things from the article that you mentioned talked about how it's those mid-level managers, whereas the senior leaders, they get a lot of training in soft skills and communication and things like that. But a lot of mid-level managers and kind of those people who are thrust into that leadership role in that mid-level often don't get that sort of soft skill and communication and empathic leadership that they really need to fully empower their teams.
Do you think that's contributing to some of this AI adoption? Because what's one of the terms that they had in there? FOBO, fear of being obsolete. Why?
Yeah,
So leadership is having one view of AI adoption, but then there's the peons like me who are down on the bottom using AI, and there's a complete disconnect between how we're using it and what we feel about it.
yeah, absolutely. So, that fear of being obsolete, and it's not unique to AI, right? It's any time that you are kind of asked to train your replacement, be that, a automation on an assembly line or, bringing in new people, into the company and you're being asked to, train up somebody who someday could replace you. That fear of being obsolete is something that a lot of people fear, and a lot of that comes back to the psychological safety, and a lot of it comes back to their wariness about their long-term place in the organization. Are they actually going to still have a job? And you see all the articles and all of the content out there about the number of positions that AI could eliminate. Whereas what they're finding is the companies that are most successful with AI adoption are doing a couple of things. Number one, I was listening to a McKinsey podcast a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that they were talking about is the companies that are most successful on AI adoption are the ones that are, instead of, as they called it, smearing peanut butter across the bread to try and just put AI everywhere and see where it works. They're doing deliberate work to look at what are the end-to-end functions that they can actually incorporate AI with, or AI into, to make those functions um, work more smoothly. Part of that then becomes actually talking to the people that are working on those functions and having the necessary conversations about how this will empower them, not replace them, giving them that psychological safety, building in that empathy of how are we going to do this and how are we going to work with you instead of work instead of you to move forward to make this better. So when you kind of take those two layers, working end to end for AI adoption on a strategic level and effectively communicating that back and forth with, not just to, the people that are doing the implementation, you have a much higher success rate in actually getting the technology implemented, getting people to buy in and use it, and there's a huge uplift on the bottom line, according to a lot of the research.
And I guess the opposite could be true too. If leadership is not having those conversations with employees so that they don't have this FOBO, um, they could then be told to be using AI or be replaced with AI. And then that comes back to harm the organization because people won't be using AI correctly because they're fearful and angry at leadership. So they're going to make the organization and their leaders look bad because they didn't include them in that, the conversations that you just mentioned.
Yeah, no, you're talking about the opposite of, psychological safety.
Yeah.
And, that psychological safety is so important to these conversations. If you actually want people to, implement something and to work with you on it, well, they need to feel psychologically safe so that they understand what their role in it is, what their future in it is. Otherwise, you know, they are much more likely, and it says talks about it in the article, to sabotage it,
Mm.
putting, you know, non-appropriate information into improperly secured AI platforms, or fiddling with the output, or intentionally misprompting so that, you know, you can just sit there and say, see, the AI is all messed up. It doesn't work at all. We're not going to be able to do this. I guess you'll just have to keep me.
Yeah.
Well, from a company standpoint, that is absolutely not the goal, right? From a company standpoint, you're looking to increase this efficiency. You're looking to increase the productivity. You're looking to save money over time by having increased, efficiency and productivity, not necessarily by eliminating jobs that AI can do instead, but by making sure that the people that are still there and the people that will continue to be working in your organization are empowered by AI, not replaced by AI.
Should leadership take a step back and understand AI better before trying to impose it on the rest of the organization? Because sometimes I think it's goes back to what you said earlier, is that sometimes some of these leaders get the soft skill trainings and things like that, but that never seems to trickle down to other levels of management and even the general employee base. Should the same thing happen with AI? Have them get an understanding of it and then try figure out how to adopt it and have those conversations.
So I think there's a couple of things going on here. Number one, there has been a rush to adopt AI, and there's been a lot of studies that have looked at this. And you can listen to the podcasts and the pundits and et cetera. But in the rush to adopt AI, a lot of companies have taken this spreading the peanut butter approach, as I mentioned from the McKinsey article. And they have not really stopped to think about how can we do this most effectively. So one of the things back in February, I had an article in Security Journal Americas, and it was the 12-month outlook. And one of the things I talked about there is those companies and those in particular security organizations within companies that are going to be most successful are those that start to look at it from a strategic perspective. They need to understand how this can be applied. They need to understand what are the benefits to it, where will it actually create efficiencies instead of confusion. And then, like you're saying, once they have that understanding, and part of that understanding comes from the ongoing discussions with the people who you're actually going to ask to implement it and use it, right? So
Mm.
that you can have those ongoing discussions with them, develop with them the strategy of how it's going to be implemented, the understanding of how everything is going to work. And then as you move forward, continue those conversations because AI is changing very quickly. It was just 2 years ago, 3 years ago that we were talking about this amazing thing of large language models.
Mhm.
And, from there, they got smarter and they're doing more things. And now you've got agentic AI, which is able to, you know, for lack of a better term, think for itself and provide you answers not just from its repository of knowledge, but it's able to actually connect with one agent to another, to another, to another to form teams of agents that can then actually accomplish, services for you. But the question again comes back to what end, for what purpose, strategically to benefit your organization and your workforce.
Right.
And without the conversations and the understanding of what you're actually trying to accomplish, you're going to end up with sabotage. You're going to end up
Mhm.
with disgruntled workforces, with the fear of being obsolete. And you're going to end up, spending more time. I'm going to actually say wasting more time and money than you're getting benefit from it.
It's like the employee base has the fear of being obsolete, FOBO, but
Hmm.
leadership has a fear of missing out, FOMO. So they're
100%.
rushing to adopt, and then they're causing some, I won't say all, some of their own issues with adopting AI or potentially
Right.
adopting AI.
Yeah. And you see that as a major problem. Um, but again, it comes back to understanding what is actually going on, i.e., what are the activities that can be enhanced by AI, right? How is that going to be implemented? And what is the strategic end goal that you're getting from it?
Yeah.
And if you don't start at that base and that understanding of what actually, what are the activities that are going on that can be enhanced by AI, and really, the only way, or the best way, not the only way, but honestly, the best way to understand that becomes engaging with that workforce
Yeah.
and having them understand that we're not looking to replace you here, we're looking to empower you. And there was also an interesting part in the article, that talked about psychological safety and risk taking for, in an organization that has a high level of psychological safety, you have a workforce that is more willing to engage with their managers and leaders to take risks that could have tremendous potential upside for the organization.
Hmm.
But in organizations that are lacking that psychological safety, that risk taking, and that change management problem is much harder to achieve because they're afraid that if something goes wrong, they will be the ones blamed.
Right. Right.
And then what does that do? You talk about not only fear of being obsolete, but just the, fear of unemployment because something went wrong, they took the blame, they're shown the door.
Yeah.
So, you know, it all wraps into that concept of, you know, the culture of the organization. How psychologically safe is that organization? How empowered are the people in the workforce? You know, how do they manage not just change for AI's sake, but how do they manage change in general,
Yeah.
right? Because it's all going to be tied together. AI is just the new layer.
And that's a perfect spot to end the episode. Chris, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and time with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Alex. I appreciate the opportunity to, have the conversation with you and appreciate you asking me on.
Don't worry, there'll be another time.
Excellent. Thank you so much.